Welcome to the Fit Dad Nation podcast, forging strong fathers and raising a stronger generation. It's time to get up or shut up with your host, Steve Roy.
Hey guys, this is Steve Roy, the host of the Fit Dad Nation podcast. Welcome to the show and thanks for listening. Before I introduce today's guest, I just want to take a quick moment to invite all you dads who are listening right now and who are ready to start taking action on reclaiming your health and fitness and becoming better fathers and better men to join our online community. And the best way to do that is to head over to Facebook and apply to our private group, which is the Fit Dad Base Camp. It's facebook.com/groups/Fit Dad Base Camp. So my guest today is Aaron Walker, and I'm really excited to have him here with me. He's a life coach. He's the author of View from the Top, Living a Life of Success and Significance, and currently runs viewfromthetop.com and the Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind group. Aaron works with men to help them become the best versions of themselves, which is something that I also have a very deep passion for, so I can really relate to his message. So I'm super excited to talk to him. And Aaron, welcome. Appreciate you being here.
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me on Fit Dad Nation, man. I'm pretty fired up today. I feel great, and I'm pumped to be on your show. So thank you for having me.
You bet. Actually, I read a stat that you have been interviewed more than 800 times. Is that right? 800 times?
I spend a lot of time being interviewed, and I love it. Yeah, in 48 months, and we're approaching 1,000 interviews now. And so I love to spread our message. I believe in it. I'm kind of like you, right? It's your message, and I want to share it. So, yes, that's true.
All right. Yeah, so I've been watching your videos, and I've actually been following your stuff for quite a while now. And for those of those listening that don't know you, Aaron, I mean, your smile, your humility and your genuineness is just so contagious. Like, you just can't help but smile and just kind of feel good when watching your stuff. It's a pretty rare thing. I love it.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Years ago, I went through some trials and tribulations, and I thought, I don't get a do-over. I've got to enjoy myself today. And tomorrow may not be here. And I went through a tragic experience, almost 20 years ago. And we can talk about that more than the interview, and gave me a little different perspective on life.
Sure. So, I know you have a really successful business, coaching business, mastermind business. You're kind of all over the internet. But I want to hear, just a little bit about, your backstory, how you started out, and, if you're willing to share that story that kind of, made that change of the direction of your life.
Sure. I came from a very poor family in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm a native Nashvilleian. I love Nashville, Tennessee, but 3 generations deep from right here in Nashville. But it's a great city. Started working in a local pawn shop when I was 13, fell in love with the business, met a couple of guys that had a lot of money, and I approached them one day and said, hey, why don't we open our own pawn shop? And they said, hey, we've never thought about that, especially with somebody 18 years old. So to make a long story short, we formed a corporation, started a pawn shop, and then we grew it to several locations. And then when I was 27, I sold out to a Fortune 500 in Fort Worth, Texas, and it kind of set me up for life. And I thought, man, this is the American dream, Steve. Like, go from broker to convict to being able to retire at 27. I mean, good night. And then 18 months later, Robin was waking me up from a nap in the middle of the day, and she goes, this is not what I signed up for. I mean, you're getting in the bed in the middle of the day. You've gained 50 pounds in 18 months. I hate to tell a guy that is a coach instructor, for health, that I gained 50 pounds in 18 months. But, Steve, I was bored out of my mind. I tried to go to Florida and hang out, and I lasted 3 weeks. I said, I got to do something. Came back home. Went back and bought the pawn shop I started with when I was 13 years old. We built it 4 times the size it was, and business was amazing. I was 40 years old, working 3 days a week, and life was amazing. Just like you, I had 2 little girls, at the time, and they were just outstanding, and I got to go to school with them and do some things during the day and go on I was the only dad at most of the events. It's like I was always there with my girls at Brownies and Girl Scouts and cheering and all that stuff. I was always there to support them. And my life from the outside was utopia. I mean, everybody would tell you the big house, place in the mountains, all the stuff. And then one day, August 1st, 2001, now about 17 years ago, I was headed to the office, It was a hot August morning like it is in Nashville, about 7:30 in the morning. And there was a guy crossing the street ahead of me to catch a local bus, and he hesitated in the median. I took back off again. As soon as I got to him, he took off running for the bus. He just didn't see me, and I ran over and killed a pedestrian. And man, you talking about your life transforming instantly. Mine did. I pulled over to the side of the road, and quite honestly, I don't want to be a bummer and a downer here on your show, but I was so nervous and I didn't want to turn around and look. I didn't want to look back. I couldn't get the courage to turn around and look behind me. And finally I did. I got out of the car and took my cell phone. My hand was shaking so hard I couldn't dial 911. Finally got my hand stopped and I dialed 911. I turned around. There was people everywhere. Cars on both sides of the road were stopping. Very, very busy highway. So 4-lane road, two lanes going south, 2 going north into Nashville and out of Nashville. And there was cars everywhere. So I ran over and this guy's motionless. And I'm thinking, Lord, please let this guy be okay. You know, well, the paramedics get there and they said he's got severe head trauma. And they put him on a gurney. He was still alive. They put him on a gurney, put him in the ambulance, and they took him to Vanderbilt Trauma Unit here in Nashville. And this was on a Wednesday. Saturday morning, I get a phone call about 9:30, and they said, Mr. Walker, he didn't make it. Well, man, my heart just stopped. I'm like, God, what are you trying to show me or tell me here? And I just couldn't believe it. I said, my life is so good. Business is amazing. I've got these 2 great kids. I'm working 3 days a week. I mean, like, I'm living the American dream. It's utopia for me right now. And then out of nowhere, this left hook came. I mean, it was blindsided. So I couldn't deal with the stress, quite honestly. I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit that, on the show. But the truth is the stress got me. And one day I kind of come unglued at the office about a month later, and my partner said, Big A, are you okay? And I said, no, I'm not. I'm not okay. I said, I've been chasing money my whole life. I've been working every day, since I was 13, and I'm retiring. I'm quitting. And so we go and work out all the details. I sell him the business, and then I quit. I mean, I didn't do anything. I was 40 years old. Robin and I traveled extensively, and I was grateful that I had a little bit of resources. I was able to travel, and I spent the next 5 years traveling. We didn't do anything. I built a new house. We went on trips. I just had to get my head cleared, and I did. Well, you're not going to like this, Mr. Health Coach. Robin woke me up from a nap again 5 years later. She goes, you're getting fat and lazy again. What are you doing? And I'm like, dang, Robin, what do you want me to do? She goes, go back to work. Start a company. I don't care what you do. Get out of my hair. So we went in the construction business. The guy that built my new house was phenomenal. I formed a partnership with him. And then we took that company to number 1 3 consecutive years over the next 7 years. And we killed it. I mean, it was an amazing business. And then finally, I said, I'm retiring this time. Steve, I've retired more than the law allows. My wife said it should be illegal to retire 3 times. So finally, this time I retired. And she said, okay, good for you. I'm in a mastermind group with Dave Ramsey and Dan Miller and Ken Abraham and Jeff Mosley. Some of those names may mean something to you. Some of those names may not mean anything to anybody. But they said, what are you going to do now, Big A? I said, I'm going to go to the Caribbean. I'm going to sit on the front porch of a tiki hut, and I'm going to rock myself into an oblivion. And Dan Miller never smiled. He leaned over the table and looked at me, and he said, that's the most selfish thing I've ever heard you say. Well, Steve, I wanted to poke him in the eye. I'm like, come over here so I can smack you. I said, I've been working since I'm 13. He said, Aaron, you and Robin have been married over 30 years. You've had 12 successful companies. You need to teach other people how to do it. I said, I'm not teaching anybody anything. I said, I am wore out. I'm going to quit. Dave Ramsey said, hey, come do Entree Leadership Mastery Series. I'll give it to you. I said, what? I said, that's a $10,000 gift. He said, come do it. I think you'll like it. Then Dan Miller said, come do Innovate. And these are 2 coaching programs. I went and did it. And Steve, I loved it. Dan Miller texted me on the way home. We all live here in Nashville. And he texted me. He said, the people leaned in. They were listening to your stories. And I said, well, maybe I'm just a good storyteller. He said, no, you've got something to tell that's valuable, and you need to teach other people. And so Robin and we're Christians by faith. And so we pray about everything. So we prayed about it, and I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to give it a shot. So I started coaching some guys, started doing some podcast interviews, and my business just exploded. People started coming from all over the world, and I started coaching. And I said, I had 15 one-on-one clients, and that was about to kill me. I said, I can't do this. So I started a mastermind group because I've been involved with mastermind groups for 20 years. And next month, we're going to be launching our 14th mastermind group. It just blows my mind. God just keeps sending us these amazing people. Now we're in 8 different countries around the world. And I'm having the time of my life, just to be totally honest with you, helping ordinary men become extraordinary in everything that they do.
Man, that is quite a story. And you are quite a storyteller as well, though. That certainly doesn't hurt.
Well, I don't know about that, but I've just got a colorful background, I guess.
So what would you say, more recently, you're not what we would call a typical sales guy, right? I mean, when we think of an internet marketer or a salesperson, that's not you. What has been, a couple of the things that you think have been the most important, what has led to your success in this most recent venture with your online coaching and your masterminds?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I can tell you straight up, and it's not just this business, it's every business, is I know how to build relationships. And it is absolutely, hands down, without a question, your best tool in your toolbox. If you know how to build relationships and have a giving mindset. See, I'm not a taker, I'm a giver. And if you give enough, the natural reciprocity is you're going to get. And see, it's so contrary to the way we're raised. It's like, hey, look out for yourself. Don't show your cards. Don't tell anybody anything. Hey, I'm an open book, man. I'll tell you anything you want to know because I have an abundance mindset. I don't have a scarcity mindset. There's 7 billion people on the planet. And it's like, hey, there's enough over here for me to carve out a little area of a few people to make a decent living. See, my objective is to help other people grow. And if you help enough people, Zig Ziglar says, you're going to get all you want. And it is so true. If you don't hear anything I say on this interview, man, be an open book. I had a guy call me recently. He said, I love what you're doing with the mastermind group. And I said, praise the Lord. He said, hey, I want to join. He said, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be straight up because I'm a man of integrity. The only reason I want to join is I want to copy exactly what you're doing. And then the phone got real quiet, and I said, come on, man, I'll teach you everything I know. He goes, what? I said, there's so many people that need to be taught and trained and lifted up and encouraged and edified. You think I got the corner on the market? And he said, no. I said, come on, man. And I opened the books. I showed him everything. I'll show anybody because, listen, I promise you, if you'll have an abundance mindset, not a scarcity mindset, it'll pay dividends like you've never anticipated.
That's interesting you say that because I have 2 mentors, and they both are on completely opposite sides of the fence. So I have one that, and then both are extremely successful. They have big businesses. They're making tons of money. They're doing what they love. They're helping a lot of people. And one says the way to do it is to give away everything and ask for very little in return, and it will come. You build relationships, and the other end of the spectrum, the other guy is telling me, you're giving away too much stuff. They have no reason to pay you because you're giving away so much free content. And so now I have, the little angel and the devil on my shoulders, and, both are, I would like to model, ideally have a bigger business. Both of these guys have really, really wonderful businesses and their models as well.
Sure.
So, that's something that I personally have, kind of teetered on the fence about, and I don't know if there's a right answer, but it sounds like, the way you've approached it is, I know you're obviously, just from the fact that you've helped out almost 1,000 people on their podcast shows, you're just willing to give, and I don't really see too many sales pitches from you in your videos. Actually, really none, and I'm sure that that's by design, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Let's clarify that. I think both of your guys are right. Okay, it's just where do you draw the line? Okay, so you can't obviously give away everything. because like when you join my mastermind, there's a fee for it. And when you hire me to be a coach, there's a fee for it. I think you give away tons and tons of information. Like we got to make a living. Like I've got a bad habit. Like I like to eat and I got to have money to eat, right? So we got to make a living. And the other thing I want to say too, there's nothing wrong with making money, right? You should charge handsomely for your services because you're adding great value. And I know you're coaching, you charge because you're a fit guy. You know, you've been there decades now, 2 decades you've been doing this. You know how to coach, you know how to, right? People should pay for that. Like I've had 12 businesses, right? I've got some experience and people need to pay for that, right? Because I like to go on vacation. I like to eat. I like to have a nice car. I like to, do those things. And I got to have money. I love to give money away too. So I've got to make money before I can give money away. So there's nothing wrong with charging, right? I want to do that. But what you've got to figure out is where is the dividing line? Like there may be services that you're doing that you should be charging for. I don't know. I haven't looked at your business model. There may be things you're giving away there that you could charge for. There's 2 schools of thought too. There's perceived value. Some things that if you charge too little, you're not going to sell it because people think it's just like everything else, and you're not going to sell it because it's too cheap. When you give it away, sometimes people think, well, there's no value there, so it's not worth having. So there is a balance. There's a business model that we've got to look at. And oftentimes you'll sell more if you'll increase your price because people say, here's the thing. I hired Dr. David Kruger. He was my coach years ago. He was head of Baylor University psychology department, and he helps like NFL stars and people that are movie stars and things like that understand why they do what they do. And I hired him to coach me, and he said, listen, he said, when you go into a store, if you were going to buy a 500 SEL Mercedes, and somebody said, I've got one for $5,000. He said, what would be your first question? I said, well, what's wrong with it? I mean, those cars are expensive. He said, yes. And he said, if it was marked closer to retail value and it was still a good deal, you probably would sell it because it takes more bandwidth yourself to overcome what's wrong with something than it does to talk yourself in to paying more. And he said, what we've got to do is there's a balance. We've got to find where that balance, where it's a good deal, but yet it's priced high enough that people think there's a perceived value. And so I think both of your guys are telling you the right thing, but you've just got to discern for yourself where you draw that line and say, these things are for free. These are lead magnets. This is help. This is giving. This is instrumental. It's purposeful in other people's life. But these 3 things I've got to make a living on, and here's what their prices are.
So you work with men specifically, right now?
I do.
In your groups?
I do.
Okay. And I think it's probably safe to say that every man listening right now is interested in improving, some aspect of their life. And so, I'm guessing that not every single person that you coach or that are in your groups are high performers. And I'm curious to hear, kind of what the biggest struggles are that you come across for someone that would be listening to the show. For example, let's call it a 42-year-old dad, 3 kids, long commutes, been sitting at a desk for 20 years, is just kind of wading through life, waiting for retirement, no real passion. There's, no real drive there. He's just kind of grinding out an existence. Is that something that you see a lot in your coaching programs?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. We see guys right there and they get to 40, 45 years old and they go, is this all there is to it? I mean, is this all I'm going to get? And see, I've been an entrepreneur now for 40 years, right? I've never worked for anybody since I was 18 years old. And the reason I've done that is not because I think I'm that smart. It's because I want to create my own schedule. If I work harder, I want to make more money. If I don't do much, I'm not going to make as much money. I want to be able to control those things myself. And for me, success, one of the greatest tools is having your own schedule, being able to say, I think I'll work today, or I think I'm not going to work today. I may hook the boat up and go fishing, or I may, you know what I'm saying? To me, that's a huge part, of my life from a success standpoint. Is the money is good, but being able to choose your own schedule. Well, when you've got a guy that's sitting behind a desk for 20 years, normally they have golden handcuffs, right? They can't get away because they're making too much money, and then they're afraid of failure. And I hear this over and over and over. And I want to help you unpack that just for a second, if I could. First of all, and you've heard this before, I don't really believe in failure. And I really don't believe in failure. I believe you either learn or you succeed. I don't believe in failure. I believe what that teaches you is this is a way not to do it. So don't repeat that. and pivot and turn. The other thing is people are afraid of what others say. And I call it the 18, 30, 60 rule. When you're 18, everybody's talking about you. When you're 30, you don't care. When you get to be 60, you find out they weren't talking about you to begin with, right? Me or Steve or anybody else listening to this, you're not popular enough for people to sit around the dinner table and talk about your successes or your failures. Let me tell you how it goes. It's the same in all households. Hey, did you hear Steve's podcast didn't work? No, I didn't hear that. Hey, man, pass the potatoes. That's the extent that we're talked about, but we think everybody's talking about our failures and successes. And what I say to that is fear missing an opportunity more than you fear failure. Like, Steve, I couldn't lay in bed at night and think, would it have worked? That would kill me. Just stick a needle in my cornea. It's like I just couldn't lay there and think, I've got this great idea. I wonder if it would have worked. I had rather do it and it not work out than to lay there and think, would it have worked? Listen, guys, life is too adventuresome, right? Here's the difference. And let me just tell you something else. I told you relationships was your number one tool in your toolbox. The number two is consistency. And I'm going to tell you something, not to be boastful, okay? I'm saying this with great humility. The thing and the reason, I'm not the sharpest tack in the box. I make up for education with grit, determination, and perseverance and consistency. I'm not quitting. I'm the weeble wobble dog. You hit me, I stand right back up. You hit me again, I'm not going down, right? I squeeze every drop out of the towel. When I go to bed at night, I am so exhausted because I gave everything I've got every single day. And I do that whether I feel like it or not. A lot of guys go, here's what this tickles me. When I'm coaching guys, I'll say, hey, man, you need to be blogging more. And they'll blog, and I'll go back and I say, hey, I checked. I looked on LinkedIn. I didn't see your blogs. Well, I tried it for 6 weeks and it didn't work. I said, what? 6 weeks? I wear shirts longer than 6 weeks. What are you saying? You got to do it, man. I made a commitment to do 4 Facebook Lives a week. You know how many I do? 4. Every week. I don't care if it's raining, hailing, snowing, sleeting. I don't care what it's doing. I'm going to do those. You know how many I've done now? Hundreds of those. Podcast interviews, almost 1,000. I go home at night sometimes and I can't talk. My voice is shot. You know why? Because it works. Here's what happens. We do it for 2 or 3 weeks and it doesn't turn an ROI, a return on investment, and you quit doing it. You're about a foot away from gold. And then you change and you go down a different path and you try something new and that don't work in 6 or 8 weeks, and you change and you never get any critical mass. You never get any momentum. And when the momentum gets going, it's like a snowball. It picks up speed and then you can't stop it. Guys, listen to me. Do what you are passionate about, but do it for a different reason. Do it because there's purpose, because passion is an exhaustible resource. It'll only keep you there so long. If there's no purpose, you won't do it long term. And you've got to have a greater purpose. Fear missing the opportunity and develop a mindset of you can do it. My mom had a saying when I was a kid, and I hated it worse than anything. She'd come in my bedroom in the mornings when I was a kid, and she'd be singing this song, can't, couldn't do it, and could did it all. And I was like, what in the crap is she talking about? And as I got older, she said, listen, you're not allowed to say can't. I said, what? She said, when I tell you to do something, you can't say, I can't do it. You're going to try it. You might not do it, but you're going to try it. And I would try it, and most of the time it would work, and that built my self-confidence. And then that built my self-esteem. And what I learned is my mom didn't even know it. She was helping me push through upper limit challenges as a result of changing my mindset. Carol Dweck talks about it in her book, Mindset. We've got a growth or a fixed mindset. And if you want to be successful, you have to change your mindset.
Sure. I mean, and you bring up a phenomenal point about having a purpose. And, my first question would be, where does one find that? Because, I spent, when I was working at my desk job, I worked there for 11 and a half years. And I'm going to tell you, I was miserable. I was miserable. It was like a living hell for me. Literally, I wanted to be anywhere else every day. And, it was so frustrating, and so I just dug in. So I dug in to do like a ton of self work, and started reading everything I could, personal growth type stuff, and what's my purpose in life? What should I be doing? And it took years, literally, of me just beating myself over the head to figure out what I really wanted to do with myself, because I knew it wasn't what I was doing. And so I know there are millions of guys out there that are just like we just talked about, right? Going through life. They don't really think about that, right? They show up on the weekends, they have a couple beers, they watch a football game. They're not really digging deep enough to find what I'm really passionate about and what is a greater purpose. I mean, so what do you tell those guys? Because there's a better life. I mean, no doubt about it. If you're just going through life, just being mediocre, just above the line, there's a much, much better way to live.
Right. Well, here's the first thing. I came home once with a C on my report card, and my mom freaked out. She goes, "You can't have a C." I said, "Why? It's average." She goes, "Yeah, I know. That's just as close to the bottom as it is the top, and you're way above average, and you can do better work." She pushed me, right? That's what these guys need. You need somebody around you to push you. I've been in an accountability group with 3 men now for 30 years. Every Friday morning, all 4 of us meet for accountability. And you're like, "Man, why would you want to do that?" Because it makes me better. That's why I want to do that. I want to go to this group, and they point out your superpowers and your Achilles heel, and they point out your blind spots, and they say, "This is what you need to do more of. This is what you need to do less of. And if you don't change this behavior, it's a blind spot. It's going to knock you off the cliff if you're not careful." I invite those kind of questions. I send out questions. I got a list of these questions. If anybody wants them, they can email me. But it's questions about me personally. How do you view me? And there's 10 questions. There's actually a few more. I've added a few more to that now. And I'm like, man, I'm going to take it on the chin when I get these questions returned. Like, how do I treat my wife? And do you see me doing X and X and X? These are the things, these are the questions. And then when people answer that back, I go, God, I didn't even have no idea I was being perceived that way. When I was young, I was perceived as cocky and arrogant and those kind of things. And I started getting these responses back, and I was like, man, I better pay attention to this. There's more than one person saying this. And I better watch this because I'm portraying this sense of arrogance or cockiness. My wife would keep me in check on that as well. But what you start doing is there's a general consensus of the multitudes, and you're like, man, I need to pay attention to that. Well, see, people don't invite that into their life. That's why I've been in a mastermind group for 20 years, every week. For 20 years, because other people have different perspectives. They have different filters. They've had different life experiences. You can only see things one way. I don't care how much you try. Physically, it is impossible to see it a second way. But when you have people around you that don't have anything to gain or lose as a result of what they tell you, they're going to tell you the truth, and they have different life experiences. It's like, I've been married to be 40 years coming up pretty soon, and people come to me oftentimes and, I've been married 2 or 3 years or whatever, and I say, that's not going to end well for you. If you go home and say that, I got 40 years of experience that says you're going to be a knucklehead if you go say that. See, it's experience. We got to have people around us, Steve, all the time that can help us understand that there are different perspectives. There are different ways. And if you want a life that's different, you got to get people around you. We were designed to be in community. Isolation is the enemy to excellence. And if you want to excel in your life, it's incumbent upon you to get involved either in an accountability group, a men's group, a mastermind group, weekly. Once a month, I don't think is enough. Certainly less than that is not enough. It needs to be, life happens fast, and a lot of it happens in a 30-day period. So for me, it's every week now for 20 years. People say, why do you do that? Because it works. And it's made me better as a result of it, because I have like my own board of directors of people around me. So if you want to get better, you got to get in community.
Yeah, that's a good point. In thinking about that, I think a lot of men, among other reasons of not kind of branching out and trying to pursue their passions. And it's not just the fear of failure, but it's a thing that so many men have. Is their ego gets in the way because, maybe they think of themselves as this, highly decorated professional. They have all these credentials. They're making a bunch of money. They wear fancy suits. And if they quit, like you said, that they'll be perceived a certain way. But it's hard for a man, most men anyway, to take something like that, to step down and, people are going to say you're crazy for leaving that job like they did with me. And if you fail, then yeah, your ego, takes a blow. I mean, I'll just tell you real quick. I was wearing, really nice suits to my job in finance, right? I had a nice office with a view. We had a really huge, it was a $300 million business, plenty of money, but I was 100% miserable, and I didn't care what people were going to say. Everybody was like, "You're nuts. You've worked so hard to get where you're at. All these certifications and licenses, all this stuff you've done. You're just going to walk away from it to go run a gym making $45,000 a year." I said, "Yes, that's what I'm going to do. That's exactly what I'm going to do." And that's what I did. And it sucked. And I had to struggle. I mean, I struggled financially, so I hustled. I mean, I got up at 5 a.m. I went to teach boot camp classes. I came back and worked 10-hour shifts at the gym, and I hustled as much as I could to make enough money to live and pay my obligations, and I did. And it led to me starting my own business 6 months later, and that's what I've been doing for the last 4 years. So it's there. A lot of people were like, I can't believe you did that. You're an idiot. And I said, you know what? This is my life, not yours. I don't care. And I didn't have the ego. I was willing to walk away from this prestigious. It wasn't easy, but I think that gets in the way, right? I mean, the ego blocks a lot of men.
Well, Ryan Holiday talks about it in his book, Ego is the Enemy. And that's a great book, by the way, for those that are struggling with ego. Ego almost got me in real trouble years and years ago because I thought, hey, I am the golden child, come from a broke, poor family and made enough money to retire at 27. And I was humbled many times after that through many things. Your ego will get you in a lot of trouble really quick. The other thing is, I think you've pointed out that's very important. It's not necessarily the prestige and the accolades that you receive from doing an occupation. It's your quality of life. Like, you may make less money, quite honestly, for a period of time. You never know what your coaching business is going to lead to, but the quality time that you're able to spend with those two little girls you've got are irreplaceable. And I tell guys all the time, I can teach you how to make money. It's not that hard. But if you come home with a pocket full of money to a house full of strangers, you still end up a loser. And I want to encourage you that you're doing the right thing by what you're doing right now, because I'm sure the time demands were far greater with your prestigious job. But your little girls are going to be gone in a few years, and you only get one go through with them. You don't get a do-over. I can start more companies. I can lose money. The office doesn't have a memory, but those two little girls do. And they're going to remember who their dad was, and they're going to remember that you were there playing with them and hanging out, and you had time for them. And I see so many guys come home every single day, and the little boy goes, "Hey, Dad, can we pitch ball?" "No, son, I got to return these emails, and I got to give these clients a call." And then the son eats dinner and they go to bed, and his dad kisses him bye as he leaves in the morning, and he has no relationship with those kids whatsoever. Now, you tell me what's more valuable. You got a little car that's nice, you make a little money, and you don't even know your kids? No, thank you. I'm not interested in that. I'm just telling you, life is too short, and money does not scratch the itch like you think it's going to. I know, man. I've had a beach place, and I've had a place in the mountains and big house on the hill. I've had all that stuff, and it lasts about a nanosecond, and nobody else cares that you've got that stuff. I'm just telling you. You think people are making these judgments and saying they are not, because they don't care. They're too busy dealing with their own stuff, and we let our ego jump in the way, and it causes us great conflict in our family life. So I want to encourage you guys today, if you can cheat and err on the side of your family, do not err on the side of the business, because I promise you that business will be gone one day. You'll lay on that deathbed and you'll go, "I wished I'd spent more time with my kids." And I don't want any guy ever to have regrets about not spending the time with their kids.
Yeah, it reminds me of an old client of mine I had years ago. He was a super successful president of a real estate development company. He'd go out to get his Ferrari serviced and come home with a new one. I mean, he just had money to burn. He had this huge mansion in this really wealthy area, and he had two little kids, a little son and daughter. And every time I trained him for a few years. I worked with him quite a bit, and he had no relationship with his children. I mean, the nanny, the au pair, he had all these people that lived in his house and took care of the kids and everything else. He was never around. He's never around those kids. They go off to these fancy schools. And I'm like, you're missing the boat here. And this was really, became much more prominent after I was divorced and I couldn't see my girls every day. You take it for granted when you're married. and it's a lot easier to say, all right, go play, go, I'm busy. But when you can't see your kids like I could only see them every weekend, that's the whole week without them. I mean, not only was I emotional mess, it was an extremely difficult time, but I came to appreciate every moment I have with them. So now when I see them, it's experiences. So we go out and we do stuff. I know it's bike rides, and we take them up to the mountains to hike and things that they're going to remember. It's not about, buying them stuff, but, it's something that I think I personally believe like a married man can't fully appreciate because you have unlimited access to your children. But when
we
you
can't take it for granted, man. Kids spell love Time. Yeah. And if you're not giving them that, they're getting cheated.
Yeah, absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So I wanted to talk to you about something that's a big part of my business, and that's being part of a tribe. So you and I both work with men. I've seen the power behind being part of a brotherhood or a group or a close-knit tribe of like-minded men. And I know it's worked extremely well for you. Everything I do in my business is also in groups. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, why is this power of being part of something bigger, part of a tribe, so important and so impactful?
Yeah, people want to be a part of something, right? Whether it's, your coaching organization or Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind group, whatever. People want to feel a part. And in that tribe, your brain is asking you a question. It's saying, are you with me or are you against me? And that is the reason that people want to be associated with something. They got to understand the expectations that they're having, because the brain's trying to figure out, do I know the future or do I not know the future? And if you know and it's crystal clear, the situation feels safe. But if the expectations have not been laid out in this tribe, then it feels dangerous. And then people rank themselves all the time. They say, am I equal to, greater than, or less than? And you want to make people feel greater than you in this ranking situation. Then people want to know that they have a voice. They want a sense of autonomy in this. And when you give them those four elements, they are all in your tribe, and they just want to be a part. So yes, it is huge. We call it the ISI brothers here, and is absolutely huge for us being involved in a tribe.
All right. So one thing that I've noticed, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this, is so I have a paid membership program, right? Guys are paying to be part of this brotherhood, and it's fitness based, but we do a lot of dad centric stuff, and it's about just becoming the best dad we can. So we do a lot of challenges. We get on calls every week, but there are a certain number of guys, and they're actually more than I would like, that hide, right? They're not posting, they're not sharing. It's even hard sometimes to get them even to respond to a message. And so, I was talking to somebody about this, and they said, it's probably because they feel a sense of shame, like they're not carrying their weight. And I hadn't thought about that before, but I want to hear your take on what's the mindset of a man that joins a group with the intention of bettering himself, and yet withdraws completely within the group and is just not willing to engage,
Sure.
but stays in the group.
You said you've watched a number of my videos, and you'll see a common thread in there is authenticity. I'm very vulnerable. I'm very transparent. I try to be very authentic in everything that I talk about. I hate the Facebook persona, where you're laying on a beach in Honolulu. Listen, life's not that way all the time, right? That's the only pictures that we post. I mean, Robin and I fight. We argue. I have disagreements with my children. I feel bad sometimes. I mess up sometimes. If you want to be strong and genuine and real, you need to let the facade down. And you don't need to do it with everybody. That would be crazy. People have to earn the right to breathe life into your life. They've earned the right to tell you hard things. And you do that over time by getting to know people and building these relationships. But the faster you let the facade down and let everybody know, hey, I'm just a knucklehead just like you, right? There's things that I do in my life that are not right. There's areas I'm strong in. There's areas I'm weak in. I need your input. I need your help. And most guys won't get to that point because they want everybody to think they've got it going on. They want everybody to think I've got every base covered, and that's just not realistic. It's just not true. We have areas that we need help. That's why in the mastermind's been so helpful to me. I can go in there with no facade. I can go in there and go, you know what, I'm hurting today. Or Robin and I have met an impasse here and I don't know which way to turn. Or my children are acting up and I don't know what to do. Or my business is failing and I don't know where to turn next. And you're like, these guys start pouring into you, because the more transparent and vulnerable you are around a certain group of people, the more their barriers will come down, the more the facade will go down. And the leader is the one that sets the pace. And that's the reason for me, I'm totally transparent all the time. Some things are embarrassing that I share, but I get email after phone call after invite that says, because you're authentic, I can identify with you. You're not one of these guys that's made a little bit of money and you're going, oh, my life is great. I jet around on a private jet and I speak and we sit by the pool. That's just not the way it is. And I'm telling you something, I know some very, very, very wealthy people that I'm friends with. Their life's not that way either. And I'm just telling you that the sooner we all relax and let that wall down, the more invite that we're going to get from other people and the more they're going to share. So just they don't do it with everybody. Everybody doesn't want to hear all your stuff, right? Do it in a setting, excuse me, that's designed for that. Do it like in your tribe. Get in there and go, okay, hey, listen, we're not going to go out sharing this with everybody. You know, if we need to sign a non-disclosure, we'll do that or whatever. But here's the truth of the matter. And then when you get to the real truth of the matter, the solid footing and foundation, that's when you can start building a real life.
It's interesting that you mentioned the authenticity piece, because I have a quote here from a friend of mine, somebody I had on the show, and I think you know Jason McKenzie. He says, I spent 41 years of my life trying to conform to the character of the strong, emotionless alpha male because I never understood there was an alternative. I wanted to be accepted into this club so badly that I was afraid to be myself. And I think, he's a perfect example. And if you know him, he's extremely open and vulnerable. And here's he's a guy, if you know him, right? He's a good-looking, fit guy. He's got a couple daughters. But here he is. He's just laying it all out there. And I know he's seen a lot more success because of that, right? He's not worried about the ego. He's not worried about the judgment. No. He's being completely honest with himself, and he's putting it out there. And I think that's extremely, difficult for most men to do that.
Yeah, because they're living behind that facade.
Mm-hmm.
And you said something earlier. I want to revisit it just for a second. You talked about men that have these jobs and they're scared to leave because their identity is tied up into it. And so you got to be really careful what you tie your identity up into. If it's tied up into titles or possessions and you lose either of those, then you've lost your identity. So be sure you know what you're tying your identity up in. You can go to my website and there's a couple of documents there. One is called a personal assessment. And I've taken the price off. They're free. I give them away. Here I go. I'm giving stuff away again. But it's a personal assessment. And another one is called What Do I Want? And you can go to both of those, go to that website and get both those documents. And you can really dive deep into your identity and your ideals and your relationships, your faith, your family, your career, and answer those questions and really do a deep dive on yourself.
Yeah, okay. I'll put the links to that in the show notes when this gets published. It's interesting hearing you talk, and I definitely see the value in approaching business from a purely relationship standpoint, but it's so hard not to get sucked into the game. And I believe I've struggled. I'm not where I want to be, not even close, because I've refused to play what I call it the game, which is everyone's got this look at me mentality. It's flashy. It's everyone's screaming for attention. And I'm in an area, a niche, working in the fitness space that's extremely probably the most crowded on the entire internet. And so you have to stand out. But I just refuse to play, the clickbait and doing stupid stuff for views and, just everything that it seems like is happening out there in order to sell you something, And so I'm not going to lie. It's been frustrating, extremely frustrating, because the growth has been much slower than I had anticipated and that I would like. And it's simply that I'm not willing to go there because I want to feel good about how I make my money. And if it's slower, but I'm 47 years old, so it's not like I'm a 30-year-old kid that has 10 years to mess around with what works, what doesn't work. So I have that pressure, sitting on my shoulders of, you need to get it together, and you need to get it together now. But, my approach is like yours. I mean, I want to be the face. I want to be I want to be a real person for these guys.
Right.
I just don't want to be this fitness guy hiding behind a sales page. And I have friends that are making 7 figures a year being that person. They're just marketing like crazy, spending a fortune on Facebook ads. But you can never find them. Like, they're not a person. It's just a program. And that's not something I would feel good about.
You like me, you like the relationship aspect of it. And you like to have the purpose in helping other guys get fit and be a better dad and a better husband and things like that. And so you're pouring yourself into that. And there's a dynamic to that there is a trade-off a little bit. Some of those things may not scale as fast as you want them to, but you never know the next person you're going to talk to. You never know how that's going to transform the way you're doing things. Another reason I like to be in community, accountability groups, mastermind groups, is because every next conversation could be the catalyst that takes your business to the next level. They may give you one little insight, one little tidbit, one marketing strategy that you can get your message out faster to other people, that you can still be very personable. But you're like, man, I didn't even know to know that. And that's why it's so paramount. Listen, I'm a TED Talk junkie. I love to watch TED Talks. I'm an avid reader. I read hundreds and hundreds of books. I love to learn new information. We've got to be a constant student, right? We've got to be constantly filling our mind with positive things. Cut out the noise and the garbage, too. We turned the news off literally 20 years ago. We don't watch the news, period. Somebody said we had an election a few years ago, and I started laughing, but I'm not that in the dark. But the truth of the matter is, I got a lot better things to do with my time than to sit and watch the 10 o'clock news every night, or start my day with 6 people were murdered last night and 3 bombs in Iraq. And, it's like, I hate some of that stuff, but my life is going to be much differently if I fill my mind with positive things that's going to move the needle for our family and other people that I coach than it is for me wasting 2 hours a day filling my mind with negative energy. And I just want to encourage you guys, be really careful. It's kind of like you instruct them, what you put in your body is the fuel, right? Same way mentally. Be real careful what you watch, what you're around, and who you listen to. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and that's why it's so important. If you want to fly with the eagles, you can't be running with the turkeys. I mean, you've got to get people around you that know how to move the needle. And you keep doing what you're doing, Steve, and this fitness Fit Dad Nation is going to blow up. I'm just telling you, you just keep doing what you're doing because you're real and you're genuine, you're authentic, and people are starving to death today for authenticity.
Yeah, it's funny you mention the news, because I am so out of touch with current events. I mean, I didn't even know the Red Sox were in the World Series. I don't know anything about current events. I don't ever watch television, and I definitely don't ever watch the news because, like you said, it's nothing but bad news. That's all it is.
Yeah, who wants to fill their mind with that stuff? Yeah.
It's terrible. It's terrible. So there's one other thing I wanted to ask you about, and it's something that I see a lot in this business, and I've been coaching guys for 21 years, and it's about excuses and not taking ownership of their lives. So you talk about like a victim versus victor mentality, right. And I heard so much where I don't have time, or I can't do it because of this, or I can't do it because of that. And so there's no real sense of ownership. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how we go about changing or even teaching, the shift in that and taking, full responsibility for what you've got in your life and where you're at.
I think one of the biggest misnomers out there is balance. People say, I need to balance my work and life. I just don't believe you can do that, first of all. First of all, balance means equal on both sides, and things don't need to be equal. Period. They don't need to be equal. What you need to do is prioritize your priorities. See, there's only a handful of things that I'm interested in. I believe in the Greg McCowan theory of being an inch wide and a mile deep. But most people are an inch deep and a mile wide. They're trying to do 15 different things and do them well. Well, you can't do that. You read Jay Papasan's book, The One Thing, and he talks about, Gary Keller wrote that with him, there's one thing that you're the most gifted at. It is your area of genius, not your area of expertise, not your competence, but your area of genius. And you need to figure out what that is, and you need to focus all of your energy and time into that. See, a lot of people think you got to do 15 different things to make a lot of money. You don't. I can do 2 or 3 things really well and make all the money I need. But we get the shiny object syndrome. This next thing comes down the pike, the latest, the greatest, and you don't build up that momentum that I was talking about earlier. And see, what you need to do is get in your lane. You need to see where you're the most gifted, and you need to stay in that lane where you have passion and you have purpose. And you mentioned earlier about how do you find that purpose? Well, one of the things that you can determine is if you do it and it gives you energy, is probably your level of genius. But if you do it and it drains you, it's not. You're in your area of competence. And so I just want to encourage you to find out what those things are that give you energy. When you get through doing it, it's like I love, quite honestly, these interviews. I lose my voice. I'm starting to lose it now. But you lose your voice. But I can't wait to get on another one because it gives me energy. There's other things that I hate doing, and I want to blow my brains out when I think I have to do that, and it sucks the life out of me, right? I'm not going to be good at that long term, but I can go forever on things that give me energy, right? The excuses are exactly that. They're excuses. A buddy of mine told his father recently in front of me, he said, hey, Dad, he said, tell Nana I said hello. And he said, why don't you tell her yourself? And he said, well, I want to go see her, and she's important, but I've got these other things to do. And he said, she's not important to you. And he said, yes, she is. And he said, no, she's not, because if she was, you'd go see her. See, we do what's important to us. Excuses or no excuses, we do. We make a choice. Every single time we say yes, we say no to something else. And we do what's important. Rory Vaden talks about it in his book, Procrastinate on Purpose. And he says some things we need to procrastinate on because they're not in order of priority. And you need to decide for you what is important, and that's where I'm going to spend my energy. You need to learn to say no a lot more. No is a complete sentence. I used to tell my kids that. No, what part of no don't you understand? You're not doing that. And it's the same way to people today. They ask me, can you do this? No, I would like to do that, but it's not on my plan. Maybe you'll have me back and I'll talk to you about this. I'm a big planner. I take a Google spreadsheet and I know exactly what I'm going to be doing 3 to 6 months in advance every single day. I know the people I'm going to be interviewing, the blogs I'm going to be writing, the books I'm working on, the interviews. I know everything I'm going to be doing. So all I have to do is execute my plan. And so I get up and I go, this is what I got to do today. I do the 12-week year. Brian Moran's 12-week year. I've got 2 or 3 goals. That's what I focus on. I do exactly that task. You rank yourself and you get these things done, and then the goal takes care of itself because I focus on the task. And I'm just saying excuses are like something else. We all got one, right? It's not important to you. If it was important to you, you would do it. You can say what you want with your mouth, but your actions are screaming loudly at me. Whatever you're doing, that's what's important to you. Yeah,
exactly. I actually teach that quite a bit because, like I said, I'm used to hearing excuses. And it just comes down to priorities. And I say, listen, it's not a bad thing that your health and fitness isn't a priority. It's not for me to say. It's just not, because you're putting all these other things in front of it. If you want to change, if you want to improve your body and your health, and you want to get your body fat down and all those other things, then you have to change something. It has to become a priority. And that's where we come in and start figuring out how is that going to happen. But yeah, and it's not. It's not. So anyway, this has been awesome, Aaron. I really, really appreciate your time with this. And where can people find more about you and what you do?
Well, the easiest place to find me is viewfromthetop.com. And there's an application there to get involved in our mastermind. If you really want to take your life to the next level, you can get involved in that mastermind. And I promise you, it'll be a paradigm shift for your life, getting into the community that I'm talking about. Hey, listen, if it's not mine, get in somebody else's. It doesn't matter to me. I just want you to get involved in an accountability group, a mastermind group, get in a 12-week year plan, do something to get people around you to help move your life to that next level.
Got it. Yeah, I'll put the links in the show notes. And thank you again. This has been a wonderful conversation, and hopefully we will keep in touch.
Steve, thanks a lot, buddy. Appreciate you having me on, man.
Yes, sir. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, buddy.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, if you want more information, check out the Fit Dad Basecamp group on Facebook. And don't forget to stop by fitdadnation.com www.ironSharpensIronMastermind.com. Until next time, keep kicking ass and taking the next step. You can do this, Dad.